Superheroes speak on comic book tree, where legends are born and stories redeem. With Days, John, and Dark Dawn, who will we cast? A podcast that's here to make the past last.
Welcome to Superhero Speak. I'm your host Dave.
And I'm Dom.
And we are live on the floor at New York Comic-Con 2024. And it is crazy. It's day 2. We did do some recording yesterday. You're going to see all of it, I promise. But before we get to any of that, Don, this is your first, not only your first New York Comic-Con,
right,
your first Comic-Con, period.
Absolutely.
How do you feel so far?
Like a small room on a big hit. But, it's exciting because there is a lot of great cosplayers around. We're surrounded by thousands of people that are just like us. So at day 2, I'm feeling a lot more comfortable now, enjoying everything, and I just can't wait to get back in there. Got some great interviews we're going to do, and maybe spend some money today. But I'm way more comfortable today and excited to go enjoy the festivities.
Yes. Unfortunately, John could not join us this year. He had family obligations. So it is just Don and I, but we've been having fun. We've got press rooms lined up. We already did a couple great interviews. In fact, hold on. Answer. I was trying to remember his name that we talked to yesterday. So I'm going to bring up the calendar because it's on the calendar, and I can remember the name that way. Jordan Mechner. There we go.
Jordan Mechner.
So we talked to Jordan Mechner yesterday. He is the creator of Prince of Persia, and of course I say this in the intro to the interview. If you watch this podcast, you have seen Prince of Persia. Actually, someone just walked in front of our camera like it wasn't even there. So we're going to get some B footage walking around, and it's going to lead right into our interview with Jordan Mechner. Enjoy. All right. Well, here we are. This is actually our first interview at New York Comic Con this year. And if you watch this podcast, you have played the Prince of Persia. So everyone should be familiar with this man. This is Jordan Mechner. How are you doing, sir?
Great, thank you.
How are you enjoying the convention so far?
I got here this morning and I just came to the press room, and so I saw the excitement on the show floor. I haven't really been down there yet.
Yes.
I'll be there this afternoon for signing.
So I guess first I'm going to ask a little bit about Prince of Persia. I obviously I had the pleasure of hearing you already do 2 interviews, and you talked about it quite a bit. But what was the original inspiration behind that game?
Okay, so going back to 1985. So I just finished college. I'm from New York. This is my hometown, and I had already done one game, which was Karateka, which was a karate fighting game, and I wanted to do a kind of a running, jumping, puzzle-solving platform game. This was, Lode Runner, the Castles of Dr. Creep, right, and I guess Mario were kind of the platform games of the time. And what I felt was I loved that gameplay, but I had just seen Indiana Jones and the opening sequence of the movie, where he's running through the temple and the spikes are springing out, and he tries to jump over the pit and he misses and he grabs on by his fingertips and has to pull himself up. The suspense as that crunching gate is coming down. This is a platform game. These are the same moves that you have to do in a platform game, but it's so visceral and suspenseful. Wouldn't it be cool to do a game that had smooth animation where you felt that your character was really vulnerable and had weight, so that if you fell too far you would really get hurt? That was sort of the one sentence idea. And then the setting for Prince of Persia, because that concept, I didn't know, is it going to be a science fiction game? Is it going to be medieval?
Yeah, as a kid at that time, when that game actually came out, I didn't know anything about Persia. So the setting of it, it was kind of obscure to me. So, yeah, that was interesting that you chose that. What made you choose that?
Yeah, I was looking for a setting that would be, iconic, that instantly, because the graphics at the time were so simple.
Right.
That, but I think there was something about the story. For me, it was the tales of the 1001 Nights, movies like Thief of Baghdad. You know, there was this 1940 movie with Conrad Veidt as the evil Grand Vizier Jafar, and there's a princess, and there've been Ray Harryhausen with Sinbad and the Fighting Skeletons.
Yeah.
So I'd sort of seen these as movies as a kid. I had read them as storybooks.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like in the collective unconscious. I felt like if I just had an arch and just with pretty simple graphics, you could sort of kind of evoke that sort of magical, mystical universe, and that this was a setting also that I hadn't seen done yet in a computer game in 1985. So that was the idea, and I started by videotaping my younger brother, who was 15 years old at the time, in a pair of baggy pajama pants, running and jumping and climbing and doing all the movements that we would need for the game, and then 3 years of work on the Apple II computer.
Good old Apple II, I remember that.
All right, and you can answer this however you wish. When the movie came out, do you feel that it captured the spirit of the game?
So the movie came out 20 years later.
Right.
And in between, of course, Prince of Persia had gone through many versions. The Sands of Time. Yeah. I mean, so I was the writer on that game in Montreal, the first Ubisoft reinvention of the game.
Right.
And so that had been a great project. And all right, that was loud.
I'm a little shocked. Usually people are more quiet in here because they know there's interviews going on.
Yeah, that's not even an interview. She's talking to someone on a phone. Yeah. All right, I don't know if this is going to be edited or...
I will edit that out, yes.
All right. Yeah. Okay, so I've been the writer on Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, and then I went back to Los Angeles and adapted it as a screenplay.
Okay.
For which ended up being a Jerry Bruckheimer Walt Disney Pictures movie. So I was the first screenwriter on the movie, not the last.
Right.
So it evolved. So I was seeing the movie, which came out in 2010. I was kind of in I could recognize the structure of the screenplay that I'd written, and also elements from the game, The Sands of Time. I mean, there's still the dagger, there's still the vizier.
Yeah.
The screenplay that I had written was already different from the game, because the game story was, I had written it with the team to be playable.
Right.
The fact that it's set in a confined palace and everybody's, all the characters are sand monsters, except for the two main characters and the villain. That's to serve the gameplay. So the movie was, an epic adventure that, the characters went on this kind of road trip across Persia. So it had to be different. But the point is, to be the first writer on a project that's going to take years and involve thousands of people, it's it has a relationship to the work that I'd done, but it's not the thing itself. Whereas that first game that I had programmed and done the graphics and kind of sweated over every line of code. Yeah, and that's kind of coming back to writing graphic novels now with Replay, my graphic novel memoir, in which I talk about making Prince of Persia, but also the story of my family. I feel like I've come back kind of to that way of working, with writing and drawing a graphic novel, drawing every panel, every line. It's kind of like making a game was back in the 80s. It's very individual. It's very intimate.
So for those who are watching who aren't familiar, what would you say the elevator pitch of Replay is?
So Replay is it's a memoir of 3 generations of my family. It tells my story as a American kid, passionate about video games, making games on the Apple II, and episodes from development of Prince of Persia, and The Last Express, the Prince of Persia movie, the kind of the career path that led me to move to France 8 years ago with my 2 kids, and who were in junior high and high school at the time.
Right.
And it was only on arriving there that I realized that I had just done the inverse of what my grandparents had to do, because although I'm American, my dad and my grandparents are from Austria. And my dad was 7 years old in Vienna in 1938 when Hitler and the Nazis seized power. Yeah. So the family had to flee for their lives. My dad was separated from his parents for 3 years, from age 7 to 10, in what became Nazi-occupied France, before finally being able to get out of Europe, saving their lives to come to America and become American. So I had sort of, by becoming a foreigner in France, again, it was this sort of strange echo of the previous generation's story. Obviously, moving to France for a video game project is much more pleasant than having to fleeing as a refugee, like with your life in danger. So there, the similarity ends. But that theme of replay, of that there are parallels between the different generations' stories. That's really what the book is about. And of course, replay in the sense that we do it in a video game. In playing Prince of Persia, you have to replay the level over and over until you get it right. So on the cover of the book, you can see these three bands, each in a different color palette. There's my dad's story of World War II, my story of growing up in New York, with the Apple II, and then there's my grandfather's story, sort of the backstory as a young soldier in World War I on the Russian front, because he had already experienced war and survived one war by the time he became a family man in Vienna and a young doctor in Austria in the 1920s and 30s. And then there's the layer of me moving back to France, with my kids. So there's actually yellow is the color of that present day story from Los Angeles to Montpellier. And so like in the book, there's actually three color palettes. One color palette for each timeline.
Correspond.
Yeah, so it's the nested stories, the interwoven stories of these three generations. And so it's very much a family autobiography.
So, obviously, you did the art for this book.
Yes, Replay is the first book that I've drawn as well as written. I have done comics before as a writer and films as a screenwriter, but this is my first time drawing, or I should say my first time since I was a kid. Because before the Apple II computer in the 70s, before there were computers, I probably was on path to become a comics artist. I stopped drawing at age 12 to learn programming and to make games. But so I've kind of come back to my first profession in a way now.
Yeah, and did you feel like, because it's such a personal story of your family, that you were the best one to draw it?
Yeah, I mean, when I started writing comics with great artists like Lewin Pham and Alex Pouvillon for Templar, which was my first published graphic novel. It's a sort of an Ocean's 11 heist, in the 14th century, with Knights Templar. That's sort of when I started sketching. But as a hobby, I thought, I love drawing. I used to draw as a kid. I'm glad to be drawing again, but I didn't have the ambition to draw a comic myself. I thought, I'll leave that to the professionals. But you do something every day for 15 years, and somehow you reach a certain level. It's like with playing the guitar, you end up forming a band with your friends, and then you're playing. So in this case with comics, I was like, I think I'm ready to do a book, and I think this autobiographical story that I have in mind, I think it has to be me that draws it, because I'm drawing my dad, I'm drawing my kids, I'm drawing the people who are closest to me. And also, I know what my office at Broderbrand looked like in 1988 when I was making Prince of Persia. I know what movie posters I had on the walls. So even the greatest artist would do a great job, but I would look at it and be like, I feel like I'm just looking at some sort of Hollywood movie version. That's an office, but it's not my office. That's someone.
Yeah, I mean, you could describe it to them, but we already know if you say one sentence and it goes, however many people it goes through, it gets distorted. So that would be the same thing. You wouldn't be looking at what you want to look at.
Yeah, it's like casting a movie. You cast an actor to play someone who they're never going to be that person. But somehow in cartooning, you can draw a person, and if you know the person, you can actually draw them. You're not drawing an actor playing them.
It's not a caricature.
There are a lot of people who are going to say that you've always been a visual artist because of video games and then that path. But what are some lessons that you learned from going from doing video games to comics to then doing a graphic novel?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, in a way, everything I've done in my life is storytelling, but these three media are actually so different. Yeah. There's story in video games, story in movies, and story in graphic novels. But the way that the story is, the way that you have to approach the story is so different. Games are playable stories. So it's not so much what happens in the story that matters, it's what the player can do. And if you put the best moments of a video game into cinematics, you're kind of cheating the player of the chance to experience those things in first person as the player.
Right.
That's something you can only do in video games.
Yeah.
And what you can do in movies that you can't do in any other form is you control the pace of the experience. Like you've got sound, you've got visuals, you've got music, and the rhythm of the cutting, like the movement of the camera, what you're doing with the soundtrack. Like in the editing room, you control that to the point where you're creating a completely immersive kind of storytelling that's so emotionally powerful.
Right.
But once you've got the 2-hour movie, it's like, even though the way that people react to it may be individual, that movie is the same for everyone. Whereas in a game, you've got a story that can be experienced by different people in different ways. Someone might go off into a part of the level that you didn't think they were going to spend so much time on, and they explore some corner where someone else would just like not even take that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can have someone who does all the side quests and they go through all the story like nothing while I'm struggling because I'm just trying to go through the story without the side quests.
Yeah,
So,
and again, you're really building a universe for
Yeah.
players to explore and discover in their own way.
yeah.
Yeah, and so comics are yet a third thing that are like, it's a linear form like a movie. Like you've got
Right.
you've got a book with 320 pages, but the way that each reader receives those pages is individual. You can invite the reader's eye to go in a certain direction, but some people read comics that they read the words and just glance at the images, and others will just look at every panel and absorb all of the details before they go on to the next panel. You can turn back to a previous page. You can have correspondence between 2 different upper left-hand panels on different pages, and the fact that it was on that part of the page kind of registers subconsciously. Like people read fast, they read slow. Their eyes move over the page in their own way.
Yeah.
So it's really an interactive medium, not in the way that games are, but in a different way.
And to be honest, like if I'm reading a book for us to review on the podcast, I am one that I go through it quickly, word by word, and I get through just to absorb the story so that we can talk about it. But if I'm reading it for enjoyment, I'm one of those that every page I'll spend a minute looking at all the art and look for every little detail. And so it also depends on what, like from my point of view, what you're reading it for, But yeah, like something like that, I definitely probably would be reading for joy, and like I would take each page in. And but you're right, and I know people that read it real quick and then go back and look at the art, or they just look at all the art then go back and read it.
And there are books that you can read more than once, and it's a different experience.
Yeah.
That the second time you notice things and details that you didn't the first time.
Yes.
It's
definitely interactive, and people don't think of it that way, but it definitely is.
The other thing about writing and drawing for comics is that the relationship to time is very different. In game, timing is critical. In a movie, timing is controlled by the editing. In a comic, you can't really convey time in that sense, but you can imply it. Sometimes what happens between 2 panels is what readers remember. Something that you didn't actually draw, because like the 2 different things that you have drawn, like the reader's imagination creates what's missing,
right?
And because their imagination created it, it becomes a powerful memory in its own right.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then because I've obviously met a lot of comic writers in my life, and they also talk about things like reveals, right? Like people don't think about that, because when you're writing a TV show or a movie, it's you wait for the big reveal at the end of it to catch people on to watch the next episode, let's say. But with a comic, it's like it's on that page turn, right? Like you gotta plan out your panels where like, oh, okay, they're going to be on this page, and then when they flip it, they're going to see the big reveal.
Yeah, I mean the same panel has a different meaning if it's the last panel of a 2-page spread or the first panel.
Yes,
because you kind of, when you turn, you kind of take in the whole 2-page spread. So even if you're going to read the panels in order, you sort of have a preview of where it's going to go.
Right.
Like if there's going to be a big change of location or a time jump, or you're going to see something that's just powerful or horrible.
Right.
You kind of, if that's waiting on the right page, you kind of know it. Whereas if you turn the page and you hit with it, it's a different effect.
How long did it take you, like from start concept to completion, did it take you to do this? Because if it's a labor of love, I feel like those normally take longer. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, I had the luxury on Replay of really being able to immerse myself in it and spend 3 years researching, writing, and drawing it.
Yeah.
And I really loved the process. I almost didn't want it to end, but I also wanted the book to be done so that people could discover it. And it was really the perfect moment because if you read Replay, it kind of also tells the story of how the stage was set for me to do this book, because I moved to France in 2016 for a video game project. Spoiler, a video game project that ended up not getting released. It got canceled.
Oh, okay.
This is one of the Prince of Persia games that was never made. The story has a happy ending because now there's Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which was released this year by Ubisoft Montpellier, which is the town in France that I moved to. So there is a link there.
Okay.
But the story told in the book is of the previous iteration, the one that got canceled. So in 2019, I had kind of the mission that I had come to France to do, in the video game world, was done. And I had made all the effort of changing countries, changing languages. My kids were in school. And so I made the decision at that point to stay, as an American expat in France. And the next project that I did was this graphic novel. So I couldn't have done this had I also been, working with a video game team, because as anyone in the industry knows, that it's a 110% commitment.
Yeah.
And also doing a graphic novel was 110%.
Yes.
So it was really great to change rhythm, and from the excitement, and the pressure of a sort of a big budget team project to do something where it's just find my own rhythm. If I don't like a page, I can draw it again. And,
Well,
I don't have
true.
There's no studio, there's no notes, there's no team structure that to worry about. It's really just, it's almost like going back to those 1980s Apple II programming days where it's just a coder who's also doing the graphics and the sound and a machine.
And the reason I kind of asked that is that our society today has become instant gratification, right? But in my opinion, something like this is more gratifying than getting likes on a social media post. But and that's the thing. Do you feel that's an important lesson that people should take? Is if you really want something and for it to be successful, it should take time. It's not something you're not going to get this done in a week.
I think success as or popularity or sales as a goal is kind of a trap for creators. And today, of course, with social media, it's even easier to track. Is something catching on? Are people are they looking at my post? Are they liking it?
Right.
How are the sales? Are they buying? But it's always been like that. It's really
true.
And even back in the 19th century, when a book was a hit, that was a
true.
But I think if you become, if the satisfaction is, is fame or financial rewards, at some point it becomes empty. The real satisfaction is in the act of making the thing, whether it's a game or a movie or a book, and in then sharing that with people and kind of connecting with readers or players or viewers through the work. That's the satisfaction, and it's always one-on-one. So when I meet someone now who played Prince of Persia, whether it's The Sands of Time, 15 or 20 years ago, or the original Prince of Persia 30 years ago, it's what they have to tell is their story of how they connected with this work. And so to sort of connect that with my intentions and my desires and the experience of creating it, that's a satisfaction that's lasting. And so whether you multiply that by 1,000 readers or by 1 million players or 10 million viewers doesn't really change the fundamental nature of that satisfaction.
Right.
So I think if you get far away from what it is that you really want to do and what it is that you love doing, and that you so much that you would do it even if you had to do it for free, then I think you're fine.
Yeah.
And as long as you can set up your life in such a way that you get to do the thing that you love, you're good.
I'm kind of curious. This is, I wasn't even planning to ask this, but with all this talk, I'm thinking, are you're still heavily involved with the Prince of Persia games at this point, or?
Well, the beautiful, the way it sort of came around is that Ubisoft Montpellier is now has released this sort of new iteration of the Prince of Persia franchise with the Lost Crowd. It's a 2D Metroidvania, so it kind of includes aspects of the original 2D game, but also the Sands of Time series that probably more, for many people, like that's the version of Prince of Persia that they knew and fell in love with. And then there was the 2008 reboot of Prince of Persia with a kind of a different cel-shaded graphics and a different hero. So this is none of those, but it kind of evokes, connects with the spirit of all of those in a way that I think whatever your version of Prince of Persia was, The Lost Crown is like you recognize it as Prince of Persia, and it's also just a super fun, super beautifully done game. So that studio is, has got this in hand now, and I think it just, I mean, I'm really in the ideal position in that, I can, enjoy these games. I can, they have my blessing, and I'm doing graphic novels now, which, really like no one else can do. Replay, if I hadn't done this book, it wouldn't exist. Nobody else could do it. True. Whereas, although the Prince of Persia game that we worked on from 2016 to 2019, that version didn't get completed. A different Prince of Persia game got made, and it's great. So as long as the Prince of Persia universe is continuing and evolving, I think I'm happy.
Okay. Yeah, that's got to be pretty cool, even if you're not heavily involved, just to see your baby still out there, 40 plus years after you actually did it.
Yeah, it's like seeing your kid grow up and
that is true. Let me ask you, though, because one thing that I kind of struggle with, I've been playing video games. I was born in 1980, so in 1984 we had Atari 26. I've been playing ever since. One thing that I miss, and I wonder if I'm the only person, the games that, the original Prince of Persia, on Super Nintendo or even the NES, those, do you miss the interpretive element of the graphics? Everything is laid out for you today. It is what it is. It's beautiful. It's great. But me as like a D&D player, I miss being able to kind of interpret what's going on. Is that something you miss? Or do you like, it's all there for me, it is what it is, that pillar is what that pillar is, and there's no imagination to it?
I mean, this is really a discussion not just in video games, but also in animation and, and in art. Right. Because photorealism has been a goal of artists, since the beginning of painting. And if you look at like what happened in the 19th century when like French academic photorealistic painting, like this is, just as photography was coming in, it kind of changed it. But until then, like there were no photographs. So a photorealistic painting was like the closest thing to a cinematic experience that you could have. So artists had gotten so good at making things so real, like you felt that they could come to life. And then the Impressionists came along and said, there's a few, splashes of paint to evoke the thing, but somehow you create what you created, the emotion that you had, and you felt it communicated everything you needed. And if you look at a Picasso sketch, with a few lines, he evokes a dove. Obviously, it's not a photorealistic dove, but it's iconic. And comics have always had that, some very realistic, beautifully drawn comics. You're like, wow, look at that artist's command of shading and anatomy, and then you've got Charlie Brown. It's just
like a Frank Miller square chin, stuff like that. But it's like, wow, it's still you get to interpret it, and it still looks great.
So anyway, just by way of analogy, to say that with video games, it's the same thing. Those pixely games of the the 80s. I think first of all, we were kids when we played them. Right. And so as a kid, you see, like, your imagination, like, creates the whole thing. Like the skeleton coming to life in, in Prince of Persia. I've had people say to me, like, they were terrified, they were traumatized by this when they were 5 years old and they saw the skeleton come to life. Like, for them, it was like, the Ray Harryhouse, they had sound effects and everything. You look at it now, it's like, just nothing. It's just a few pixels. But it's like reading a book. It's just words on a page, but our imagination brings it to life, and that's as true as ever, I think. So this pixel art style, like the reason that games are being made now with that style, it's not just nostalgia. It's also because, as you say, like we project more. We project ourselves more into the universe if it's more stylized, done with more economy of means. Like a comic being drawn in a very loose, cartoony style doesn't mean it can't be just as intense or even a more intense emotional experience than if it's a photorealistic comic. So I think there's room for like we have at this point the whole palette available to us
Really
in comics
Yeah.
and in video games. So it's really just a question of like what
do you want today?
what and why, because there's reasons behind stories. To take this Monte Cristo, this graphic novel that I've written, but I did not draw. You can see, looking at this is Mario Alberti, this great Italian illustrator. I mean, his art is, it's cinematic, it's spectacular. It's
I was definitely looking through it before.
I mean, his pages are so dynamic, and this is like, but at the same time, it's loose, it's expressive.
Right.
It's not like the kind of classic thing, where every character is posed. Like you really feel the emotion, you feel the expression. And sometimes his lines are almost loose and scribbly, but the effect is cinematic, and he uses the page like so freely and so brilliantly. So to do a book like Monte Cristo with an artist like Mario it's a wonderful collaborative experience, and it's so different, from the way that I draw, in replay, which is, I've got sort of a 6-panel layout, and constantly, because the story is so dense, I wanted a very simple, legible graphic approach, and it's the, with these sort of 3 color palettes.
Yeah. How did you hook up with Mario there? How did you determine he was the man?
Yeah, so I had the idea of doing a modern interpretation of Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo, set in America in the post 9/11 period, which I had lived through as a New Yorker, and the war in Iraq, the war on terror, and so I'd written the script, and I was in France at this point, and France has this incredible tradition of graphic novels, of these sort of larger size, full color, glossy books. And so Mario is Italian. He's from Trieste, and for him, like he had done science fiction, so it was actually a really interesting challenge for him to do something that had a historical 2005 historical setting, and but very specifically because the book takes place in, part of it in Croatia, part of it in the small towns in Connecticut and New York, like the places where I grew up. There's Wall Street and Washington. So the details of how characters are dressed and carry themselves and how their houses are decorated, like it's very specific. And so Mario actually had to do a ton of research to do this book. I mean, he was, as an Italian, asking me, okay, so in Connecticut in 2004, like how would this character have dressed? And I was like, well, go watch The Town with Ben Affleck. I was giving him a list of movies to watch, so he could do, like, even the bystander in the background. So, because if there was something like, if something doesn't, fit, you see it right away. So Mario and I are alike in that way. We both love research, and actually love it so much that if someone doesn't stop us, can spend all day researching something for one little character in the background of one panel, and all behind schedule.
So we normally sign off the podcast by saying, don't let your cake get caught in the door, which actually started off as a joke, but has come to mean don't let your shortcomings or foibles get in your way of achieving your goals. What's something that you've overcome in your life to achieve your goals?
What was the line again? Don't
let your cape get caught in the door.
Don't let your cape get caught in the door. Oh man, there's so many. I think maybe because we were, we were just talking about, research and like the hyper focusing on some one element of something. I think because both making games and graphic novels requires a focus on details, but at the same time, like a artist stepping back from the canvas, you have to kind of take a step back now and then. Go, okay, wait, I just spent 2 days working on this thing that actually it's better if we just cut that out entirely. Like it's better without it. Right. So I think I have a tendency, like many people, to sort of commit to executing an idea, and it's just so clear in my mind like how it needs to be that I forget to ask the question, is this really the right thing to be working on? So to try to balance that focus and then the big picture, because sometimes like there's just something so big and so obvious that I'm missing because I'm too deep in it.
Right. Okay. I think a lot of us suffer from that too, because I've done that. I'm a musician in a previous life, and writing a song, and it's like, oh, I don't like this chord change, and you spend days, and everyone else is like, no, it sounds fine. I've been down that road.
There's a great book that I read called The Master and His Emissary. It's about the left and right hemispheres of the brain and the way that they work together.
Yeah.
And in a way, the brain is kind of, the fact that it has these two hemispheres, it's almost as if it's constructed to give us this split personality where we can hyper-focus on things that we need to get them done. But there's also this part of the brain that's got to be aware of the big picture and how this thing that we're doing fits into everything else.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
So where did, we've been going for a little while now, so where's the best place for people to find you and your books online?
So my website at jordanmechner.com is kind of like a central place where it's got the new graphic novels, it's got links to all the publishers. That's where I put announcements if I'm going to be like doing an event or something. And also I sometimes post about the upcoming things, works in progress. It's also a site with an archive about Prince of Persia, the new Ubisoft games, and the making of the old games, with a lot of stuff, like people who are interested in the behind the scenes of game development. At jordanmechner.com we'll have that, as well as the books. And the two books are Replay, published by First Second Books, and Monte Cristo, published by Magnetic Press. And I'll be signing Replay here today at the First Second booth, and people can find it online in bookstores and from First Second.
Cool. And then the question that we normally end on is, how do you measure success?
Again, success is it's kind of I think it's more a feeling than an actual thing that you achieve. Like we have moments where we feel really happy about something that we've done or how it's been received. We feel proud, we feel rewarded or vindicated, and that feels like success.
Right.
But I don't think that's actually a state that you reach in life and stay there. It's more just like a part of the fluctuating roller coaster. I think meaning comes not from success, however you define it, but it really comes from the meaning. That is, are you doing something that you really care about? Is it, who are the people that you care about? What are the causes or the things that you care about? And how does it tie into that?
Right.
And so I think you can't succeed at that because that's life. But I think the more you're in touch with that meaning and that purpose,
right,
I think that there's kind of a wholeness there.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. We've talked a while. It's been a pleasure.
And listen, if you're watching this video, check out Jordan's books, right? Replay, Monte Cristo. And if you don't, Dark Dawn's coming to you, right? Black trench coat, hood, red light too. I'll bring it with me. And it's Acolyte time. So make sure you check out Jordan's stuff there.
I'm going to cut all that out now.
That's okay.
The other thing that happened yesterday is probably one of the best things that has ever happened to me at a con. Mad Cave asked us if we wanted to do some interviews, and I happen to know some people that work at Mad Cave because they used to work at IDW, and we were able to get an interview with Jim Califiore, right, and
Dan DiDio.
Dan DiDio, yes, and what did you say when we were talking to Dan? Like you were shocked as
I was shell shocked because not only was it Dan DiDio, used to be head of DC and all that comes with that. He was in, television. I mean, he's just it's Dan DiDio. I say more. But then the other fella was the artist,
yes,
to Exiles, which is a series that I love. So yeah, I was absolutely just starstruck.
Yes, he asked one question and then he was done. It's all he had.
That's all I had.
All right, well, let's get to that interview, and you can see how starstruck he is. All right, so we're here with the one and only Dan DiDio and Jim Califiore. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Enjoying the show so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's early.
It is.
We're not dead yet from exhaustion.
Yeah. And I'm going to have you say, this is the only day I'm here, so this works out really great. So nice. I can give it my all and then go home.
So
sometimes you get hand cramps, I see.
Yeah. As the kids say, you guys have been around for a minute. What appealed to you about Defenders of the Earth to bring back that old property as a book?
For me, I was familiar with the show, and I was actually familiar. And the reason why is that I always wanted to work in animation, and I wound up getting into ABC Children's Television, being one of the executives over there, and then working with an animation company after that. So I was very familiar with a lot of the cartoons that were running especially in syndication. And what caught me interested in Defenders naturally that it was developed by Marvel Studios, and I was intrigued by that. Stan Lee was involved in development, so back in the 80s, that seemed like a big deal to me. So when I learned about the show, I watched it, and I found that it had a slightly more mature take. The fact that Dale Arden gets killed in the first episode of the series is fascinating to me because that's not something I expected. And they do some stories that are a little more mature as they go on within the course of the 65 episode run. So I found it interesting. But the reason why I really wanted to work on the book was to work on characters like the Phantom, Flash Gordon, and Mandrake. These are characters that I have never been involved with, and I've done not just at DC, but with other characters over the years. So to be a chance to work with them and explore who they were was an interesting opportunity.
Okay. And honestly, I had never heard of the TV show at all.
This is why he lets me go first. But
But I was just talking to editor-in-chief, and who was my editor on Exiles and Gotham Underground and stuff at DC.
Yeah.
And he mentioned the project, and then it was, obviously I know Flash Gordon, I know Phantom.
Right.
Mandrake I was minimally familiar with, and the fourth character, Lothar, I had never heard of.
Right.
But it was, that's what got me into it. Like I said, I didn't know the show, but the characters to work on Flash and Phantom, and I'm really enjoying working on Phantom.
So, with people, I feel like we're probably close in age. But with people of us that grew up in the 80s with this cartoon, there's a nostalgia factor to this. But what is it you think would draw in young readers?
Listen, everything right now, there's so much nostalgia being driven in all the comics right now. Not just in comics, in all media, if you want to be perfectly honest. Everything is this constant pushback of older, pre-existing material being brushed off and brightened up a little bit. I think that what was good about Defenders is that it had a strong enough base as a slightly more mature, but I think worked better in comics than having to change what the high concept was. I've worked on a lot of the Hanna-Barbera material and brought that over in Looney Tunes, and you had to do some sort of reinvention on this. Here, it's just a slight change. For me, it was a change of perspective and setting up a new concept for the story to move forward, but all the characters are the same ones that were in the show and the ones that are in here in their actions and behavior.
And there's jump ahead of 10 years?
About 5 years.
5 years ahead. So the characters are mature. For me, with art-wise, the designs were definitely 80s.
Yes.
Each character had a son or daughter, in essence.
Yes.
It was a ward or the son, and big hair.
Right.
So it was, we redesigned that. But the interesting thing was I kept Flash's son with the big hair.
Nice.
Just because it was stuck to me a little bit. But so everything needed to be updated that way.
Yeah, and what I love about it, because he's having a lot of fun with Rick, as am I. They have so many. In that cave, they have so much Flash good stuff happening right now, and Jeremy Adams is doing this beautiful job with the Flash book that it gives us the liberty to try and explore the other characters. We're talking before, we have a big cast. We have about 13 regular characters in this series just because of the four leads, their sons, daughters, wards. Then you have the villains, and then you have just some peripheral characters involved in that too. And like I said, it's a huge cast. And the fact that we were able to update them and have some fun with them, I think, is what mattered. But I like bringing Rick into his 20s, because now it's his perspective isn't somebody of a teenager who thinks he knows everything. Right. He's actually a 20-year-old who has a better sense of right and wrong. And if he sees the parents going off track, he has a better position to try to talk to them and to try to get them back in a better perspective, which has been fun.
Honestly, I'm just wondering, because you mentioned you guys have been in it since the 80s, and comics are so different now. I came from that era. I was born in 1980. I got into comics because I go to the grocery store with my grandma, and I look at the comic rack while she was shopping. So it always kind of makes me wonder, with somebody that's been in the business, voting for so long, what is to you the biggest change? Hey, I'm right there. I play a good young guy, but I'm just lying.
But what to you is the biggest change from the 80s where we could go to a grocery store and spin a rack to today where that's non-existent? You got to go to an LGS or, you know, order online. So in that span of time, what's been the biggest difference?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything from production values to the behind-the-scenes business of it, to the fact that when you were going to the spinny rack, you know, did you know that Phoenix was going to die?
No, right, exactly.
Yeah. Nowadays, if that was a storyline, we'd know she was dying.
Right.
To hype up the sales, you know, it was just you were sort of on your own. You might have had a couple of people you knew who bought comics. You were on your own, hoping that I went to a 7-Eleven and a Krauser's. Company names carry. Because sometimes they wouldn't have all the books on the spinny racks.
Right.
And I go there, and then I go there to make sure anything that I missed. I might have some friends I talked to about it. So even that aspect of it, and you know, it's just grown up. Everything's so much more mature than it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I would say everything's different.
Everything. Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, it's a different business. It's the same format, but it's a different business.
Yeah.
You know, the series of just very covered business. It's the collectability business. It's the pricing of these. It's just, you know, the fact that it's direct market and the ordering is pre-ordering in advance. So a lot of this is pre-sale. There's no Canadian purchase, no casual buyers. Nobody just being able to find things because the level of investment on the retailer side and everybody's side is just so much, and just the sheer volume of product. There's no gatekeeper anymore. Literally everything could be on the shelf. You know, if you're, you know, as a retailer, you can buy every single product. There is nothing that's focusing the material, and it's diffused the audience a great deal. There's a great diversity in product, no dons, but there's also lower thresholds, and it's harder to find things. And a lot of things get lost in the shuffle now, probably more so than ever. And that's one of the reasons why you see so much material based on pre-existing ideas and properties, because you're trying to do anything you can be noticed in a very crowded marketplace. And what do? You put something out there that has some sort of built-in audience or pre-awareness. In order to do it, it limits out there the amount of new material that people could find. And most of the material is built for an existing audience that's been reading for 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 years already. So when you have that much going on there, the difficulty of creating product for a younger audience or a newer audience with a fresh set of eyes might be contrary to what's in the marketplace at the moment. And that fight drives maybe new readers away while you're constantly feeding the current fan base.
Yeah. The interior paper doesn't turn yellow anymore.
Yeah, well, that's good. There's that. There you go.
I mean, it's funny because you hit the nail on the head perfectly. It's why you're who you are. But it's the same thing in television and movies, right? Yeah. Like with streaming services, everything is so diffused now that you can get niche with entertainment, but you're not going to get the audience that you got when it was just 3 seasons.
Yeah. What happened is they went in television. They went for market share. They went for demographics. You know, because they were getting a bigger audience, they were a very focused audience. And now that that's getting lost, they're not sure who they're selling to anymore.
Right.
In comics, we're aging our material up with our core fan base. And I always used to have an expression at DC Comics is, I didn't want to be the guy in charge when we sold 1,000 books for $100 each.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Because ultimately you kept on shrinking your audience, and every time you do a price increase, you tighten the belt on the number of people, and you're selling to less and less people. On your spreadsheet, it looks the same, but the reality is your fan base is smaller, and sooner or later you're going to be at a spot where the price point chases so many people where you can't compensate it with the price rate change you make. And I'm sorry, I'm getting into something completely off. Hey. So, and we have pretty pictures. That's the big thing about it.
So to get back to Defenders,
I zoned out about 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm sorry.
I
can talk about this all day too. Listen, you should have gave me a regular chair instead of a soapbox to sit on.
with Defenders, do you guys have an arc plan? How many issues have you planned?
Oh yeah, we're talking about this today. I was just saying that I had a problem with a double page spread, and Jim just laid it out beautifully for me. So I'm very excited about that because I couldn't figure out how to make the dialogue work, and he just laid it out perfectly for me. But there's a big term plan. There's a story and arc for each one of the 4 main characters and their family members. And I think there's a good story that has a beginning, middle, and end. My goal, what's different before? Goal is to give a complete thought in every issue, so that there's something that you get out of every issue. Jim's storytelling is actual storytelling, which is what I really enjoy. So, it makes it fun to read and follow and understand. So you're able to tell a concise story because it's all there. But it also leads to the next issue. And if you put the whole story together, there's a big overarching story that I think you can really sink your teeth into and enjoy.
And it's 8 issues.
8 issues.
Yes. It's 8 issues. Yeah, series.
Yeah, it's broken into. I don't want to say arcs either because not it. There's a good cliffhanger at the end of the 4th issue that gets you into the next beat of the story. But there's if it was a big movie, it's the intermissions between 4 and 5, and we come back and and Don Corleone is coming back from the hospital.
I mean, and that's a good question too, because somebody who's been in the business for a while and has written for continual books that will never have an end. How different is it to be able to does it feel good to be able to say, hey, I've got a beginning, middle, and end, and I'm telling a full story?
It's a real miniseries in its own right. It's when you think about comics, miniseries originally were just 3 or 4 issues each. Because they couldn't support a full series. That's why they're called miniseries. But for here right now, 8 issues is good. You get a couple of collections out of it, which you think's maybe a good book at the end of the day when you bring the 2 parts together. I'm hoping to see that come together in a really nice way.
It's different storytelling. I mean, I write also. It's when you know they're not going any further than the end, you don't have to worry about them having anything further. Right. Or maybe even being alive or in any way capable of doing anything further because you can end them.
Right. That's Jim's way of saying he wants me to kill every character at the end.
Just Zuffy.
Just Zuffy. He hates Zuffy. If I knew I hated Zuffy so much, I would have brought him in the first issue.
And that's why it's so much fun working with
you. So, when we normally sign off the podcast, we sign off by saying, don't let your cape get caught in the door.
What's that?
Don't let your cape get caught in the door.
Which I heard, don't dip your cape in manure. And I'm like, wow,
that's
all
right. And by the way,
it's a new ending.
That's good advice too. Yeah.
Which started off as a joke and has come to mean don't let things get in your way of achieving your goals. So what's something that maybe you've overcome in your life to achieve one of your goals?
Just getting in to comics. I mean, it was. I always wanted to do it. I really didn't hang around with people who did comics, and I was just dragging my portfolio to shows and showing it to editors. That's when you'd really have the shows were smaller. DC would show up with just some tables, and you'd have editors, and you'd sit there. And I got my first gig for an independent publisher called Caliber Press, which was Gary Reed, who's a lot of people started there.
Yeah,
Jim
actually, I do the stuff for Gary Reed too.
Huh?
I do the stuff for Gary Reed too.
He was a good guy, and I mean, I didn't make any money. I was making dirt, but I would have paid him to publish me.
Yeah,
and that was it. When I got in, that was the biggest hurdle to get in. And once you're in, you're kind of in. It's not so hard anymore. You know this guy who goes over to this company. You know this guy who goes over there. And you got in. But that was my biggest hurdle, definitely getting in. I got in late. I think I was 27 or so, which is kind of late. I was talking to Mike McCone, right? He did JLA. When he started JLA, I'm like, you can't be younger than me because I read you before I got into the industry. And he's younger than me. So I got in sort of late, but,
Yeah, and I can see that mentality because when you're 27, you're getting close to 30, you start thinking, it's getting too late to do things. So
yeah. But then there's people still coming to me with portfolio reviews, and they're in their 40s. It's a dream you hold on to. And I got in, and when the market collapsed in the 90s because the speculators left, and everybody moved on to other things and animation stuff, I hung on with my fingernails because I love the medium so much.
Yes.
Yeah, my slogan. I have a weird career because I was in TV. Yeah, then I was in animation, and then from animation I went over and got into comics after that. And I didn't come up to the bottom up. I came top down. It's kind of weird to be coming in that way, which is completely different perspective on the industry and different type of relationships you have because of that. But I have a slogan too. My slogan that used to be on my door, actually had it made. It was a plaque outside the door of my office in New York. Was leave the fanboy at the door. And what that meant was there's a lot of things you want to do and write as a fan that you would never do or write as a professional. And very true. And you have to understand, and I say this to everybody, for anybody who's trying to break into the business, understand it is a business. It's a job. You're applying for a job. Every piece of work you're applying for, everything you turn in, it's not because you love it so much, I deserve it because I care more than everybody else. That's not the way you break in. You break in by hard work, and you hear what Jim just said about just perseverance. And I always had an interest in comics. I always did work around comics so that I had an awareness and understanding of the business, so that ultimately what happened was when an opportunity came, I was able to step in with a base of knowledge that allowed me to take in a position that realistically, if you had followed the previous people in that job, I wasn't qualified for. Yeah. But because I had this knowledge and other outside knowledge, it made me ready for that job. So you're always preparing for something, but you always approach it as a job more so than anything else.
Okay. Good. I'm good. I'm just in awe. Honestly, just thank you guys so much.
My pleasure.
I mean, obviously, legendary. You worked on Exiles. I love Exiles.
It was a great book.
Yeah, absolutely love Exiles. Well, so this is for me.
This is his first convention too.
Right. I'm in New York City.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We've done every New York show from the point that it was closed by the fire marshals. So we know all about this.
All right. So then the question that we normally end on is, how do you measure success?
Money, right?
It's different times and different things. I mean, when I'm drawing something and it looks like I saw it in my head, that's successful. But being employed and being able to earn a living,
Right.
that's successful too.
Right.
Depends on what you're talking about. You know, in terms of my career in comics, I'm still here. I'm still kicking.
Measure of success. I don't know. When I get there, I'll let you know. Not there yet.
Fair enough.
Good answer. Okay.
All
right. Thank you guys very much. My pleasure. Thank you guys very, very much.
Hey, where you going? We gotta wrap it up.
Oh,
We gotta bring this on home.
okay. I'm
This is gonna be the episode.
Understood.
I'm gonna film some more stuff in there.
I'm a newbie.
So there you go. There is some of our coverage from New York Comic Con. There'll be more videos coming this week. I promise. In the next upcoming weeks, we got so many interviews that we got to do that. So Don, you think you're going to survive the next couple of days?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I got a good chance.
You gonna try to hook up some hot cosplayers?
No, but I'm married. If I wasn't, I'm sure I'd be successful in that venture.
I'm not married, so don't watch this, Karen. All right. On that note, boys and girls, this has been our New York Comic Con coverage 2024. So we will see you next week and next year. So as always, until next time, don't let your keep it caught in the door. See you next week.
Superheroes speak.